masses.
And now for something completely different.
There are no safe spaces here. The truth shall make you free. So you want the truth, but can you handle the truth? And what did we learn? Well, here's another fine mess you've gotten us into.
The Craig L. Hayes Show. Just thinking, where we talk about everything else.
Hello, America, family, friends, and listeners all around this planet we call home. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show, Just Thinking. Episode number 2 on this new format that we've been working with and playing around with, and decided to go for it full blast. And it's weird that I was doing it and got it all finished up just around the death of Charlie Kirk. And I gave it a week or so just to let myself not jump on the bandwagon and all that. But anyways, that's not, we talked a little about that yesterday. Today is the 24th of September, 2025. I am talking to you from the Northern Command Center in Enterprise, Utah. Today's topic, today's subject, whatever you want to call it, is free speech. About 8 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I had to pull one of the books out. I wrote a book. I've written 5 books on a variety of interesting subjects and different things. But this book was called After Our Fall. And it was a future historic, or is a historical book with some fiction thrown in there, historical fiction with future fiction, future prophetic things that were going to come and happen in this nation before and as we fell, as this nation collapsed. A lot of people watched it. A lot of people read the book, and they thought, how horrifying, what a terrible book to say all these things are going to happen in this country, and how could I write something like that? Well, you know, you write the truth, you write the truth. And 8 years ago, everybody thought things were going to go pretty good. We were watching some things happen. I think it was around the time when Donald Trump got elected. And then we're watching the swamp, the government worker, you name them, all coming after him with everything they had. And I wrote it in the book. This was into the future somewhere. That in the day that the nation would be ready for collapse and dwindle in unbelief and dwindle in wickedness and be ripe with iniquity, that the elites, government, NGOs, the whole alphabet group out there, the one thing that they would do to help facilitate the collapse of America, because they want the collapse of America, would be to remove the freedom of speech. In other words, violate your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the right to petition your government for grievances. That was going to be gone. That was going to be removed. And in George Orwell, 1984 Orwellian speak, they would have newspeak and things that were allowed to be said, and you couldn't say this, or you would take and be imprisoned, or you'd be, pushed out of the marketplace and such. And George Orwell, he wrote that a long time ago, and it didn't happen in 1984, but it did happen as soon as Joe Biden and the Democrats had complete power in Washington, D.C. Well, my book goes on and talks about the collapse of America, how it just goes into total anarchy. it collapses, but first thing that happens to it is the collapse of the economic system, because we had run up such a huge debt. We had run ourselves into the ground on stuff. Is this starting to sound like potentially we're living in that time right now? Yes, it is exactly what we're living in. I am not a prophet, but I can read things and I can look into the future and say, if we continue down this course, if we keep on going down this course towards this, in this direction, here is what's going to happen. If we don't change the directions, if we don't get off that train track and take someone put a lever in there and take us onto another track, back to the existence where we started, known as the beginning of this nation and our constitutional republic, and returning ourselves to faith in God and the Lord Jesus Christ. For my Jewish friends, it's faith in God. For all other religions, you guys just do whatever you please. But we have to get back to believing in God and our Constitution. We have to get back to believing that God is all-powerful, not government. See, the left believes that government is all-powerful and God should not be in anywhere in the marketplace or have anything to do with our existence. They love violating that First Amendment. Boy, does the left love violating the First Amendment. So anyway, as we go into this, and I'm bringing this up today because I'm watching what's happening in the rest of the world. We're used to seeing places like, as I was growing up, Russia. No free speech, no rights, nothing. The state, the government told you what you can and can't do, and if you vary from that, you will go to the Gulag, Siberia. In China, same thing. You will do what you're told. You will do exactly what you're allowed to do. You have no rights. You have no freedom. You are granted permission to do certain things because of the Chinese Communist Party. Vary from that, you're going to prison or you're going to execute you. The Chinese are very good about that. Mao and his people, probably somewhere around 35, 40 million, maybe 50 million were killed in his country by the Communist Party. We don't know how much in Russia, but it could be somewhere comparable, several million or 10 million, 20. We don't know. We know that Ukraine was starved to death. We know any nation around when it was the Soviet Union was starved into submission. But the West was always a bastion of freedom. Oh, let's look at the Middle East. Let's look at the Arab nations. Let's look at Iran, Iraq, Pakistan. We'll look at Jordan. We'll look at Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, all across we have Libya, all these places. They are all Muslim countries. And whoever has power in that nation, whether it's the king or whether it's anybody else, some elected official that takes over and becomes a dictator, because they all end up becoming dictatorships or royal families or monarchies or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. The first thing they crack down on is your right to free speech. You will follow the state-mandated ideology or else. In those countries that also follow the Sharia law, we're going to talk about that in another episode, that you'll be punished and put to death if you don't follow Sharia law. We're going to get to that. Not right now, in another episode. But free speech, isn't it amazing that all communist countries, all dictatorships, all countries that want to move towards socialism, communism, fascism, progressivism, liberalism, any of those isms right there, they're all the same. They all have the same ultimate goal: move towards communists, where total state control and power and control over the people. the removal of God from society, and the full worship of the state and those who are running the state. That's their goal. The West, because we're democratically elected, our republic, and please never call this nation that we live in, the United States of America, our democracy. You're an idiot when you do that stuff. Notice how Democrats always say that. We have to protect our democracy. It's not a democracy, it's a republic. We democratically elect a lot of things within our country, but we are a republic. Democratic elected meaning the majority of people voted for you. But we are a republic. Anyways, back to this First Amendment and free speech. I know that a lot of people sit there and say that what we've been watching because of Donald Trump is a lack of your First Amendment rights. And we'll just go to the idiot Jimmy Kimmel. You know, here's a story for you. Some people would tell me, hey, Jimmy Kimmel's been taken off the air. My line would be, well, who's Jimmy Kimmel? I knew who he was. But who cares? Had nothing to do with free speech. Did Donald Trump order ABC to take him off, or had the affiliates, the people around the country, because remember, around the country, a lot of stations are owned by corporations. It's not an individual person usually that owns a network station, you know, ABC, NBC, CBS. It's not an individual person that owns that usually. It's a corporation that owns like 10, 20, 30 stations throughout the country. And there's several of those companies that own those kind of stores. And in a lot of those outlets in those cities, the people there were getting sick and tired of hearing about Jimmy Kimmel and his crap. They complained to their local affiliate saying, you know, what is wrong with this guy that he has to be so evil, so corrupt, and mentally deranged to make a big joke about Charlie Kirk's murder and execution, and then lie and say that it was a MAGA person. You know, all these mass shootings and all these things have been going on. It's all Democrats. It's transgender Democrats. It's transgender ideologies. It's these people. When you have a mental illness that you believe you need to take and chop body parts off on you and become somebody that you are not and cannot become, we should not allow those people maybe to buy a gun or have a gun. But that's a Second Amendment issue we can talk about. I'd love to talk about that one. But right now we're on the First Amendment. When you have someone as vile, vulgar, and horrible as a Jimmy Kimmel, Steve Colbert, and a bunch of those late night guys, nobody watches these shows anyway. You know who watches these shows? The ones that are just as crazy as the guy that shot Charlie Kirk. The people who take and celebrate the transgender guy that went into the school and killed those kids that were praying in school. Those are the people that watch those shows. Those are the ones that are taking their marching orders from people who are vile and vulgar and disgusting, like Jimmy Kimmel. But it's Donald Trump who took him off there. You have that. I was going to say a pig, Rosie O'Donnell, but I don't want to insult a pig. You see, what's more vulgar and disgusting than a pig out there? I don't know. Anyways, saying that that we're living in a dictatorship because Donald Trump took Jimmy Kimmel off the TV. And Jimmy Kimmel took Jimmy Kimmel off. Had Donald Trump called up ABC Disney and said, or Disney ABC, whatever you want to call it, and said, take that vulgar POS off the air or we're going to cancel every license that your affiliates own. That would be a violation of the First Amendment. Donald Trump did not do that. Donald Trump said nothing about that. The FCC, responding to affiliates' complaints, had plenty to say about what was going on with people like Jimmy Kimmel and Steve Colbert and all that. But the government didn't say take these people off and shut them up. Nobody wants to listen to their show except for psychos, the mentally deranged, the mentally ill, Democrats. And not even many of them watch that show. So here we are, having a debate about free speech, and we look to the West. People look to the West and say, we've got to get to the West where we have free speech. And people leave their places in Asia. They leave their places all around the world and try to get to America. They try to get to England. They try to get to France. They try to get to somewhere in the West. Only to get there and find out that those countries no longer have free speech. And if it wasn't for Donald Trump being president right now, this nation wouldn't have free speech either. You would be in jail or deplatformed, thrown off of social media, everything, had Kamala Harris been put in there. Because she is worse than Biden, and he did all these things. He saw to it that many people were thrown off their social media, including a former president. He conspired with social media companies to do these things. That is the very epitome of free speech violation. Now in England, people are getting arrested and sent to jail because if they say something and somebody is offended, it doesn't even mean you've threatened somebody. But I was watching a show about Katie Hopkins, and she was making fun of herself because she has, what's the one that makes you, epilepsy. And she was making fun of herself and goofing on herself, saying, yeah, I have epilepsy. I had to have my brain taken out a little bit, make myself. And she's making a funny routine out of it, talking about herself. Well, someone with epilepsy called the police and said, I was offended. And they called Katie in and grilled her for possible offenses to other people. What the hell is that about? That's where England's going right now. That's the road, that's the train track that England has gotten on, and they are going into full communist belief system, and they want to couple that with the protection and the promotion of all the Muslims and Sharia law in their nation. They don't care about their own citizens. They don't care about the rights of their people. You now have governments, police departments are government, okay? If a police department comes to you and says, hey, we're going to call you and have a chat with you about offending somebody and possibly send you to jail for offending. You do not have the right to not be offended. You do not have the right to sit there and say, I'm offended and I'm so upset because someone said something that I didn't like and I want them put in jail. Well, in a sane society, people would laugh at you, give you a binky, give you a little bonnet to put on your head and a rattle and say, go ahead in the corner and do your rattle and suck your binky, you little baby, you little whiny little, almost said something. Anyhow, I cannot imagine being in England with the history of Europe, the history of Germany, the history of Italy 80 years ago, and watching them become basically fascist nations. And shame on the police, Shame on government officials for promoting this. Shame on you people for not protecting your citizens in favor and instead of protecting illegal aliens and Muslims who want Sharia law and who want to destroy your nation. Shame on you. You're disgusting. We've all watched the movies. We've all seen things where people are called into the Gestapo in Germany and they're asked, why did you say something bad about Adolf Hitler? And they're taken out, drug out, and they're executed because they said something bad about Adolf Hitler. What is the difference between the Gestapo dragging out somebody and executing them for saying something about Adolf Hitler, or dragging someone into the police station and having the new Gestapo, the London police or British police, I don't know what they call themselves over there, it's just a police department. We'll just call it the police department. The police department grill them for saying something that may have offended somebody. What is the difference between the Gestapo of the 1940s, early 1940s and late 30s, and the police departments of England today? Nothing. Other than if you offend somebody, they don't take you out and shoot you, but they will put you in prison. There is no difference. That's where England has slid into. And they have done it to themselves. And they have allowed others to do it to them at the ballot box. Believe me, folks, we would be here too. We would be right there with England and France and Italy and all these other countries that are dealing with all these problems and trying to clamp down on free speech. If we hadn't elected Donald Trump and saved us from that. Scary times are ahead. It's not just in Europe. Parts of Asia that were free are starting to slip into that. South Korea slipping into a very strong government clamping down on free speech in their nation. I don't know if Japan will go that way. I would hope not. I would hope that Japan would stay strong. I'd hope the Philippines would stay strong. And I hope South Korea straightens itself out and gets back to normal and doesn't go the way of that corrupt England and the rest of Europe. England may not have a Bill of Rights like we have in our Constitution. They don't have those things in their Constitution. You know what they have? They have a government that posts and makes laws and says, here's what your rights are. Well, if a government can give you the rights, a government can take away your rights. And that's what we see happening. For all you people over in this nation, especially you Democrats, do you need me to speak slow so you can understand it? No, I'm just going to speak normally so you can understand this. And you may have to turn up your speed in your hearing a little bit. Jimmy Kimmel being taken off the air is not a violation of free speech. It's a market force reaction to an idiot who is vulgar, vile, and disgusting, and nobody watches, and then ABC loses money, tons of money on him. It's called the consequence of it. Jimmy Kimmel will be gone. Give him another 6 months to a year and he'll be gone. ABC is going to get rid of him because the affiliates around the country are not going to show it. And without that money stream coming in for that show, for the advertising dollars and those other marketplaces, ABC cannot afford to keep losing $20, $30, $40 million a year on that garbage of a show. It'd be one thing if he was funny. Hey, I'm going to stand up here and talk about Donald Trump. Here, start laughing because you like what I'm saying. That's his audience and crowd, and that's his show. Pretty pathetic. Low IQ, low mentality. Not the brightest people on the planet watching that show. And not the brightest people trying to stand in support of him and say, we're standing with you on this. Go stand with him all you want. You guys aren't that bright either. Doesn't take much IQ and it doesn't take much intestinal fortitude to be a Democrat. Oh, Craig, you're being so mean to him. No, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, being a Democrat is the most gutless thing there is. Because all you have to do is just go around saying, oh, yeah, I support you. Oh, I support you. And then when people say, yeah, but somebody has a gun. Oh, we got to hate those guns. We got to hate those people because they have a gun. And they like free speech. And they like Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. That's all it takes to be a Democrat. Anyhow, folks, that's what I have to say about that. Let me do it right. Oh, that's all I have to say about that. And with that, we're going to conclude this episode of the show. So take it away, Craig. That's me. Oh, we won't go.
You've been listening to the Craig L. Hayes Show. Just thinking.